No billionaire expects to walk into his luxury penthouse suite and find a stranger sleeping there, especially not a tired young mother holding her little girl like the world outside might steal her away. But that was exactly what Alexander Hayes saw the moment he opened the door to the presidential suite at the Grand Aurora Hotel. Alexander had returned earlier than planned from a tense overseas business meeting. The hotel manager had assured him the suite had already been cleaned and prepared for his arrival. The lights were dim when he stepped inside. At first, everything looked normal. The polished marble floors, the sparkling glass windows overlooking the city skyline, the quiet elegance of wealth. Then he noticed the couch. A woman was asleep there. Her uniform instantly told him she was one of the hotel cleaning staff. Her dark hair had fallen loosely across her face, and exhaustion was written into every line of her posture. Curled beside her was a small girl, no older than 5, clutching a tiny stuffed rabbit. Alexander stopped in his tracks. The little girl's arm was wrapped around her mother's neck, as if she never wanted to let go. For a long moment he simply watched them. The woman looked completely worn out, the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from one long day but from carrying too many responsibilities for too long. He could hear the child breathing softly. Alexander had spent most of his life surrounded by wealth, power, and people who carefully controlled every word around him. But this moment felt strangely real. Then the little girl shifted in her sleep. The movement startled the woman awake. Her eyes opened slowly, then widened in shock the second she saw him standing there. She shot upright immediately. "Oh my goodness, sir. I'm so sorry," she said, panic filling her voice. The billionaire owner of the hotel stood silently for a moment. Instead of anger, Alexander Hayes simply looked at the frightened mother and child and felt something he hadn't expected. Concern. Emma Collins felt her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the entire hotel floor could hear it. The moment she recognized the tall man standing near the door, her stomach dropped. Even though she had only seen him in photos around the hotel and in business magazines, there was no mistaking him. Alexander Hayes, the billionaire owner of the Grand Aurora Hotel. Emma stood up so quickly she nearly tripped over her cleaning cart parked beside the couch. Her daughter Lily stirred but didn't wake. I'm so sorry, sir," Emma said quickly, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just resting for a minute and—" Her words tangled together in panic. Getting caught sleeping in a guest suite could cost her everything. This job paid the rent. This job bought groceries. This job kept a roof over Lily's head. Alexander watched her quietly. Emma expected anger. Maybe shouting. Maybe a call to the manager right then and there. Instead his voice came out calm. "Is she your daughter?" he asked, glancing gently toward the sleeping child. Emma blinked, confused by the question. "Yes, her name is Lily," she answered softly. Alexander walked a little closer, careful not to wake the girl. Lily's tiny hand still held tightly onto the stuffed rabbit. "How old is she?" he asked. 5, Emma replied. Silence settled for a moment. Emma braced herself for the inevitable. But Alexander surprised her again. "You must have been very tired," he said quietly. Emma looked at him, unsure she heard correctly. "I worked 2 shifts most days," she admitted, embarrassed. "I couldn't find anyone to watch Lily tonight, so I brought her with me. I promise it won't happen again." Alexander studied her face for a moment, the worry, the exhaustion, the honesty. Then he said something she never expected to hear. "Next time," he said gently, glancing toward the large king-size bed across the room, "sleep there. The couch looks uncomfortable." Emma stared at him in disbelief. For the first time since she woke up, she realized she might not be getting fired after all. Emma Collins barely slept that night. Even after returning to her small apartment with Lily, her mind kept replaying the moment in the hotel suite. The calm voice, the unexpected kindness, the way Alexander Hayes had simply walked away as if catching an employee asleep in his private suite was the most ordinary thing in the world. But Emma knew better. People like Alexander Hayes didn't usually give second chances. So when she arrived at work the next morning, anxiety followed her through every hallway of the Grand Aurora Hotel. Every time her phone buzzed or a manager walked past, her stomach tightened. She expected a meeting, a warning, maybe even a quiet dismissal. Instead, something even more surprising happened. About halfway through her shift, the front desk supervisor approached her. "Emma," she said, "Mr. Hayes would like to see you in his office." Emma's hands froze around the stack of towels she was holding. Her heart dropped. So this was it. She slowly made her way upstairs to the executive offices, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The doors there looked far too polished for someone like her to even touch. When the assistant let her inside, Alexander Hayes was standing near the large window overlooking the city. He turned when she entered. Emma lowered her eyes respectfully. "I'm sorry about last night, sir," she said quickly. "It won't happen again." Alexander studied her for a moment before speaking. "I didn't call you here to scold you," he said. Emma looked up, surprised. "Actually," he continued, "I wanted to thank you." Now she was truly confused. "For working as hard as you do," he explained. "Most people would have quit under the kind of pressure you're carrying." Emma didn't know what to say. Just then the office door suddenly opened. A small voice rang out excitedly. "Mr. Tall Man." Lily ran inside before anyone could stop her. Emma gasped in embarrassment. But before she could apologize, Lily wrapped her tiny arms around Alexander's legs in a cheerful hug. The billionaire froze in surprise. Then slowly, he smiled. After that unexpected hug from Lily, something quietly shifted in Alexander Hayes's carefully controlled world. For years, his days had followed the same rigid routine. Meetings, contracts, investors, and endless business decisions. Every conversation had a purpose. Every person around him wanted something. But Emma Collins and her daughter were different. They didn't treat him like a billionaire. They treated him like a person. Over the next few days, Alexander found himself paying attention to small things he normally would have ignored. He noticed Emma arriving early every morning, her cleaning cart already organized before most employees even stepped inside the hotel. She never complained. Never asked for favors. She simply worked. One afternoon, while walking through the lobby after a meeting, Alexander spotted Emma wiping down the marble reception desk. Lily sat quietly nearby with her coloring book, swinging her small legs under the chair. The moment Lily looked up and saw him, her entire face lit up. "Mr. Tall Man," she called happily. Several guests turned to look, surprised that the billionaire owner was being greeted so casually. Emma immediately looked embarrassed. "Lily, sweetie, remember what we talked about," she said softly. "You should say Mr. Hayes." But Alexander only chuckled. "Mr. Tall Man works just fine," he said. Lily jumped out of her chair and ran toward him again, wrapping her arms around him in another cheerful hug. This time Alexander wasn't caught off guard. He gently patted her back, smiling in a way most of his employees had never seen before. Emma watched the moment with quiet disbelief. No one had ever told her stories about Alexander Hayes being cold or cruel, but they certainly never described him like this either. Before leaving, Alexander turned to Emma. "I adjusted your schedule," he said. "You'll finish earlier in the evenings." Emma blinked in surprise. "That way," he added calmly, "Lily doesn't have to stay here so late." Emma's eyes softened with gratitude. For the first time in a long time, life felt a little less heavy. Days slowly turned into weeks, and something unexpected began growing between Emma Collins and Alexander Hayes. Not something loud or dramatic, but something quiet and genuine. Their conversation started small. At first it was just simple greetings when Alexander walked through the lobby and spotted Emma finishing her shift. Sometimes he would stop for a minute or two, asking about Lily or how Emma's day had been. Emma was always respectful, but she never spoke to him the way others did. She didn't flatter him. She didn't try to impress him. She simply spoke honestly. One evening, after most of the guests had gone to their rooms, Emma was wiping down the cafe tables in the hotel lounge while Lily sat nearby drawing pictures. Alexander walked in after finishing a long meeting with investors. He looked exhausted. Emma noticed immediately. "Long day?" she asked gently. Alexander let out a small breath of laughter. "You could say that." He sat down across from Lily while Emma finished her work. The little girl held up her drawing proudly. "Look," she said. Alexander studied the colorful page. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a giant building that looked suspiciously like the hotel. "Is that you and your mom?" he asked. Lily nodded. "And that's you," she added happily. Alexander felt something warm settle in his chest. Emma finished cleaning and walked over. "I'm sorry if she bothers you," she said softly. "She doesn't," Alexander replied. In fact, he realized she might be the happiest part of his day. Emma looked at him thoughtfully for a moment. "You know," she said, "people think money solves everything. But sometimes, people just need someone who listens." Alexander met her eyes, surprised by her honesty. "Do you always speak so boldly to your boss?" he asked with a faint smile. Emma laughed quietly. "Only when he looks like he needs a friend." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emma gave him a gentle, grateful hug before leaving with Lily. "And for Alexander Hayes, That simple hug meant more than any business victory he'd ever had. Not everyone at the Grand Aurora Hotel appreciated the quiet friendship growing between Emma Collins and Alexander Hayes. In a place where power and reputation meant everything, people watched carefully. And people talked. At first, the whispers were subtle. Two managers exchanging glances when Emma walked through the lobby. A few employees lowering their voices whenever Alexander stopped to speak with her. Small rumors floating through the staff hallways like invisible smoke. But whispers have a way of growing louder. One afternoon, Emma was organizing fresh linens in the service room when she overheard two executives speaking just outside the door. "I'm telling you," one of them muttered, "the boss spends more time talking to that cleaning girl than he does with half the board members." "That kind of attention never ends well," the other replied. "People are starting to notice." Emma froze. Her heart sank as the words settled in her chest. She had never asked for special treatment. She had never wanted to cause problems. All she had done was talk to someone who treated her kindly. But suddenly she understood how easily things could be misunderstood. The next few days, Emma began keeping her distance. If Alexander walked through the lobby, she quietly moved to another floor. If he entered the cafe, she finished her work quickly and left before he noticed. At first, Alexander thought it was coincidence. But after several days he realized the truth. Emma was avoiding him. One evening he spotted her near the elevator as she prepared to leave for the day with Lily. "Emma," he called. She paused, clearly hesitant. Alexander walked closer, confusion written across his face. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. Emma shook her head quickly. "No, sir. Of course not." But her voice carried a sadness he hadn't heard before. Alexander watched as she gently took Lily's hand and stepped into the elevator. The doors slowly closed between them. And for the first time in years, Alexander Hayes felt something he rarely experienced. He felt hurt. For several days after that moment by the elevator, Alexander Hayes tried to focus on work. But something kept bothering him. Emma Collins had always been warm and open whenever they spoke. Now she barely looked in his direction. Every time he entered a room, she seemed to quietly disappear. Alexander was used to solving problems quickly. And this felt like a problem. One evening, just as Emma finished her shift, Alexander finally caught up with her near the hotel's quiet back hallway where employees exited the building. "Emma," he called gently. She stopped walking. Lily stood beside her, holding her mother's hand and looking curiously between the two adults. Alexander approached slowly. "I think we should talk," he said. Emma sighed softly, already knowing this moment would come. "Sir, you really don't have to worry about anything," she replied politely. "I've just been trying to focus on work." "That's not the truth," Alexander said calmly. Emma looked down at the floor. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she finally admitted it. "People are talking," she said quietly. Alexander frowned. "Talking about what?" Emma gave a small, uneasy smile. "About you spending time with someone like me." She explained the rumors, the whispers from management, the way employees had begun looking at her differently. "I can't lose this job," she added softly. "Lily depends on it. I don't want anyone thinking I'm trying to take advantage of you." Alexander listened carefully. When she finished, he shook his head. "I don't care about rumors," he said. Emma looked up in surprise. "I care about honesty," he continued. "And kindness. You've shown both from the moment we met." Lily squeezed her mother's hand. Alexander knelt down slightly so he was closer to the little girl's height. "No one should have to face life alone," he said gently. Then he stood and gave Emma a reassuring hug. Not a grand gesture. Just a quiet promise. And for the first time since the rumors began, Emma felt the weight on her shoulders begin to lift. After their conversation in the quiet hallway, something between Emma Collins and Alexander Hayes changed. The distance was gone. Emma no longer avoided him, but their interactions remained respectful and careful. She focused on her work, determined to prove she deserved her place at the Grand Aurora Hotel. Still, Alexander had been thinking. The more he watched Emma, the more he noticed how naturally she cared for others. She often helped new employees who seemed overwhelmed, offering guidance even when she was already busy with her own tasks. And Lily was always nearby, quietly coloring or reading while her mother worked. One afternoon, Alexander called Emma to his office again. Emma walked upstairs with the same nervous feeling she had the first time, but this time Lily happily skipped beside her, holding her stuffed rabbit. When they entered, Alexander greeted them with a warm smile. "Don't worry," he said lightly. "You're not in trouble." Emma smiled nervously anyway. Alexander gestured toward the chairs across from his desk. "I've been reviewing something important," he explained. "For a long time, some of our employees have struggled with childcare while working long hours." Emma nodded slightly. She understood that struggle better than most. "So I'm starting a new program here at the hotel," Alexander continued. "A childcare center for staff members with young children." Emma's eyes widened. "But programs like that need someone responsible to run them," he added. Emma looked confused. "Someone patient. Someone who understands what working parents go through." Slowly, realization spread across her face. Alexander smiled. "I'd like you to manage it." Emma's hands immediately flew to her mouth in shock. "Sir, I'm just a cleaner," she whispered. "You're much more than that," Alexander replied calmly. Lily suddenly ran forward and hugged Alexander again. "Mommy's really nice," she announced proudly. Alexander laughed softly. "That's exactly why she's perfect for the job." Emma felt tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. For the first time in years, her future no longer looked uncertain. It looked hopeful. Months passed, and the Grand Aurora Hotel slowly began to change in ways many employees never expected. The new childcare center quickly became one of the most appreciated programs in the entire building. Parents who once struggled to balance long shifts and family responsibilities now had a safe place for their children just a few floors away. And at the heart of it all was Emma Collins. She managed the center with the same quiet determination she had once used while cleaning hotel rooms. She knew the worries of every parent who walked through the doors because she had lived those worries herself. Alexander Hayes often visited the child care center during breaks in his busy schedule. At first, he told himself he was simply checking on the program. But the truth was much simpler. He liked being there. The room was always filled with laughter, toys scattered across colorful rugs, and children running happily between activity tables. And Lily was usually the first to notice him. "Mr. Tall Man is here," she would shout excitedly every time he walked through the door. She ran to hug him so often that the moment became a regular sight for everyone working nearby. Emma would shake her head with a smile, pretending to scold her daughter for being too energetic. But deep down she felt grateful. Alexander never acted like a distant billionaire when he was around them. He simply joined the moment, helping children build toy towers, reading short stories, or listening as Lily proudly explained her newest drawings. One quiet evening after most of the children had gone home, Lily climbed into Alexander's lap while Emma finished organizing the toys. She looked up at him thoughtfully. "Are you going to stay with us forever?" she asked. The innocent question filled the room with silence. Alexander looked at Emma. Emma looked back at him. Slowly, Alexander knelt down so he was eye level with Lily. He wrapped his arms around her in a warm hug. Then he spoke softly. "Well," he said with a gentle smile, "that depends on your mom." Emma's heart skipped. For the first time, she realized that somewhere along the way, their friendship had quietly become something more. The Grand Aurora Hotel sparkled under the warm glow of evening lights as families and staff gathered for the annual charity event. The ballroom buzzed with quiet conversations and soft laughter, but for Emma Collins, the world seemed to have narrowed down to just two people, Alexander Hayes and her daughter Lily. It had been a year since that unforgettable night in the presidential suite, the night Alexander had found her and Lily sleeping on the couch. That moment had changed everything. From cautious glances in the lobby to quiet smiles across the hotel corridors, their connection had grown slowly but surely, forming a bond that neither of them had expected. Tonight, Emma stood near the stage, dressed simply yet elegantly, overseeing the children's activities at the event. Alexander approached, his presence calm and steady, the familiar warmth in his eyes making her heart flutter. Lily ran ahead, grabbing both their hands, her excitement impossible to contain. "Mom, Mr. Tall Man, come see," Lily exclaimed, tugging them toward the small stage where the hotel's children had drawn pictures for the charity. Alexander knelt to Lily's height, embracing her in a protective hug. Emma felt the familiar pull in her chest, the feeling that life was finally aligning the way it was meant to. She approached Alexander, her smile shy but genuine. "Emma," Alexander said softly, turning to her, "I want everyone here to know that this wouldn't have happened without you. Without your kindness, your strength, and the way you care for Lily, and for me." Emma blinked back tears as she realized what he was saying. Slowly, Alexander took her hand in his. Lily cheered, squeezing their joined hands. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and soft candlelight, Emma knew that life had given them more than friendship. It had given them forever. Alexander pulled her into a warm, reassuring hug. "I'm staying, as long as you'll have me," he whispered. Emma hugged him back, holding on tightly. Forever, she promised. And with Lily happily between them, the small family stood together, feeling the quiet, unshakable happiness that comes when love finally finds its way home.